Some of the deepest pain doesn't come from shouting, it comes from a whisper. Sometimes, everything that breaks us happens around a birthday table, surrounded by forced smiles, scripted laughter, and that quiet feeling that something isn't right. That's how many family dramas begin, not with chaos, but with family manipulation disguised as care. When a mother, in her role as a controlling mother, leans in and softly says, "Don't shame the family," it's not advice, it's emotional blackmail. In that moment, family imposed shame takes root, heavy and isolating, especially for those who've lived through silent family betrayal. What should have been a celebration becomes a family drama at a birthday, while everyone else pretends not to see it. This is a real family story without raised voices or slammed doors, yet filled with emotional humiliation, watchful eyes, and expectations that demand obedience. And in these situations, most people believe there is no way out because it's family, right? But what if real power doesn't come from confrontation? What if the strongest response isn't raising your voice, but making a quiet decision? Sometimes, true power reversal begins the moment you stop explaining, stop defending yourself, and choose silence instead. This isn't a story about loud revenge. It's about quiet revenge, the kind no one notices until it's irreversible. A deep emotional twist that starts with a whisper and ends by changing everything. And as you listen, you may realize that your own freedom is closer than you've ever been told. It starts like so many family moments do, a dinner that feels ordinary, almost comforting. Plates are passed around, small talk fills the air, and there's that familiar illusion of safety. This is how family manipulation often enters quietly, wrapped in routine. Nothing feels dangerous yet, and that's precisely why defenses stay low. You sit there believing this is about connection, about rebuilding closeness. Parents, relatives, everyone gathered as if unity were the real goal. Trust is still intact, fragile but present. In moments like this, people raised under a controlling mother often hope, even subconsciously, that things have finally changed. There's laughter, maybe a joke about the past, a comment meant to feel warm. But beneath it all, there's an unspoken tension, the kind you only recognize if you've lived through silent family betrayal before. Your body notices it before your mind does. A tight chest. A pause that lingers too long. This is how family-imposed shame prepares the ground. Nothing is said directly, yet expectations hover in the air. You're there not just as a guest, but as someone being evaluated. Your choices, your tone, your reactions, all silently measured against what the family believes you should be. To an outsider, it's just a dinner. But to someone who grew up with emotional blackmail, it's familiar territory. Love has always come with conditions. Approval has always felt temporary. And still, part of you wants to believe this time is different. This moment creates immediate identification because it's universal. Almost everyone has sat at a table like this, thinking, nothing seems wrong. That's the trap. Emotional humiliation rarely begins with cruelty, it begins with comfort. Mentors note when everything feels too normal, pay attention. Journaling after family gatherings can help you spot patterns, what was said, what wasn't, and how you felt afterward. Books like Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents often describe this exact calm before a thunderstorm dynamic. At this stage, there's no conflict yet only anticipation. The audience feels safe, just like the protagonist. And that's what makes what comes next so powerful. Because when trust is still alive, betrayal cuts deeper and the emotional reversal hasn't even begun. The shift doesn't happen loudly. It's subtle, a pause in conversation, a change in tone. One moment, everyone is talking about trivial things, the next, the room feels colder. This is how silent family betrayal usually reveals itself. Not with drama, but with a calculated calm. That makes your stomach drop. Your parents exchange a look, the kind that says this was planned. Then comes the sentence that changes everything: if you really loved us, you would sign this. That's not love being spoken, that's emotional blackmail wrapped in parental authority. Especially under a controlling mother, love has always been conditional. A document is placed on the table as casually as a dessert plate. No explanation at first. Just expectation. This is family manipulation at its finest, present the demand as normal. So resistance feels inappropriate. You're not being asked, you're being cornered. This is where family-imposed shame enters fully. The implication is clear: refusal equals betrayal. Obedience equals loyalty. The pressure isn't just emotional, it's moral. And because it's coming from parents, the confusion cuts deeper than anger ever could. Mentors note manipulative families often frame control as sacrifice. They'll say things like, "We did everything for you," or "This is for the good of the family." If you want to recognize this pattern, books like Toxic Parents by Susan Forward break it down with brutal clarity. Around the table, other relatives go quiet. No one intervenes. That silence is part of the betrayal. It turns a private manipulation into a public test. This is no longer just pressure. It's emotional humiliation disguised as tradition and loyalty. Your mind races. You replay memories. You wonder if you're overreacting. That's the power of emotional blackmail. It makes you doubt your own boundaries. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a line is being crossed. You can feel it. This moment shatters the illusion created in the first act. The dinner was never about connection. It was a setup. And now the audience understands the stakes. This isn't a request, it's a trap. The story has officially crossed the point of no return, and the power reversal is quietly preparing to begin. The realization doesn't hit all at once, it seeps in slowly, like cold water. You look at the document again and finally understand this isn't a request. It's a setup. A carefully designed trap disguised as concern. This is how family manipulation operates at its most effective level, when refusal feels morally wrong and compliance feels inevitable. You feel every eye in the room, even when no one is openly staring. Relatives pretend to sip their drinks or adjust their chairs, but their silence speaks louder than words. This is family-imposed shame in its purest form, public pressure without a single accusation. No one needs to say anything, obedience is already expected. There's no yelling, no dramatic scene. That's what makes it worse. The humiliation is internal, controlled, suffocating. Years of growing up under a controlling mother train you. For this exact moment, stay calm, don't react, don't embarrass anyone. Emotional humiliation rarely needs cruelty, it relies on conditioning. Inside, anger rises, but it has nowhere to go. You're not allowed to be upset, not here, not now. Any resistance would be labeled ungrateful, dramatic, or selfish. That's how emotional blackmail keeps its power by turning self-defense into a moral failure. The trap tightens. Without a single raised voice. Mentors note when humiliation feels invisible to others but unbearable to you, it's real. Writing down what happened later, who spoke, who stayed silent, how your body reacted, helps reclaim your narrative. Books like Boundaries by Henry Cloud explain why silence in families often equals consent, even when it shouldn't. This moment feels isolating because it is designed to be. Silent family betrayal works best when you believe you're alone in noticing it. You start questioning your memory, your judgment, even your right to feel uncomfortable. That self-doubt is not accidental, it's engineered. Yet something subtle changes here. Beneath the shame and pressure, clarity begins to form. You see the pattern. The repetition. The control. This isn't love, it's leverage. And once that realization settles in, it can't be undone. This is the quiet birth of a silent decision. From the outside, nothing has happened. The dinner continues. Plates are cleared. Conversation resumes. But internally, the story has shifted. This is the exact point where humiliation stops being just pain and becomes information. The audience senses it too. The real reversal hasn't happened yet, but it's now inevitable. Instead of arguing, instead of explaining, you do something that confuses everyone at the table. You pause. You take a slow breath, steady and deliberate. This is the moment where instinct says fight or defend, but experience chooses something else. Silence becomes strategy. The room expects resistance, maybe even tears. Years of living under family manipulation teach you that reacting emotionally only feeds control. So you don't. You nod. Calmly. This is not surrender, it's calculation. Those who rely on emotional blackmail are least prepared for quiet compliance. They mistake stillness for weakness every time. All right, you say. I'll sign it. The words land softly, but their effect is immediate. Tension dissolves. Shoulders relax. Your parents exchange relieved glances, convinced they've won. This is the dangerous power of assumption, especially for a controlling mother who believes obedience equals control. In that moment, family-imposed shame disappears from the room, not because it's gone, but because it's been neutralized. They believe the pressure worked. That belief blinds them. Manipulators stop paying attention the instant they think they're in charge. Mentors note strategic agreement isn't dishonesty, it's self-preservation. When emotions run high, clarity is lost. Silence buys time. Reading the 48 Laws of Power often helps. People recognize why stepping back can be more effective than direct confrontation in unbalanced dynamics. Inside, your emotions are anything but calm. Fear, anger, and resolve collide. But outwardly, you remain composed. This contrast is where power reversal begins, not with dominance, but with restraint. Those watching see peace, they don't see preparation. Other relatives relax too. The crisis, as far as they're concerned, is over. No one questions the speed of your decision. No one asks what you're thinking. That collective blindness is part of the system, a family structure built on compliance, not curiosity. The audience feels that something is off. Agreeing so easily doesn't make sense. Curiosity replaces outrage. Suspense tightens. Because deep down, everyone knows no one who's been humiliated this quietly gives in without a reason. And whatever that reason is, it's already in motion. The document looks ordinary at first glance: dense paragraphs, formal language, intimidating spacing. That's intentional. Family manipulation often hides behind complexity. Assuming no one will read carefully, they rely on urgency and pressure to replace clarity. And in moments like this, most people comply without understanding what they're agreeing to. But this time is different. You read every line slowly, even as the table waits. The room mistakes your calm for ignorance, not realizing this is precision. Somewhere deep in the text, a specific clause sits quietly, overlooked and underestimated. This is where the balance begins to shift. That clause doesn't scream for attention. It's subtle, almost boring. Yet it changes everything. It protects you. It limits them. It turns control into accountability. This is the kind of detail manipulators never expect you to notice because they never intended you to. Look. The signature itself is unremarkable. No shaking hands. No dramatic pause. You sign neatly. Evenly, without emotion. This is silent revenge at its cleanest, not reactive, not chaotic, but deliberate. Emotional humiliation loses its grip when clarity takes over. Mentors note knowledge is quiet power. When facing contracts or agreements under pressure, always pause. If possible, consult resources or legal guides beforehand. Even reading books like Never Split the Difference sharpens your ability to stay calm while others rely on force. The parents don't notice anything unusual. Why would they? From their perspective, the outcome is perfect. The controlling mother feels reassured. The family system resets itself. They believe the cycle has continued, authority asserted, obedience restored. But what they don't see is that the trap has reversed direction. What was meant to bind you now restricts them. What was designed to shame now documents limits. This is power. Reversal done silently, without confrontation, without spectacle. The audience senses the shift even if the characters don't. Something irreversible has happened in plain sight. The paper is signed, but the roles are no longer the same. Time becomes the final ingredient. And when it runs out, the truth will surface whether they're ready or not. Days pass. Then weeks. Life appears to move on, at least on the surface. Messages are exchanged, routines resume, and the family behaves as if the matter is settled. This false calm is common after family manipulation. Control feels secure, so vigilance disappears. They believe the story is over. The revelation doesn't arrive dramatically. It comes through a call, a notice, or a moment. When the document is finally put into effect, suddenly, the tone changes. Confusion replaces certainty. That overlooked clause, the one no one bothered to read, begins to speak. That's when realization hits. The control they thought they had never truly existed. The agreement didn't trap you, it protected you. What they framed as loyalty was actually limitation. This is the moment silent family betrayal collapses under its own weight. The controlling mother is the first to react. Denial, then anger, then disbelief. She rereads the document, searching for a mistake that isn't there. For the first time, authority fails. Emotional blackmail loses its language when it no longer works. Mentors note manipulators panic when rules apply to them. They rely on ambiguity and guilt, not clarity. This is why written boundaries matter. Understanding agreements. Emotional or legal turns chaos into structure and protects you long after the conversation ends. The rest of the family follows. Shock spreads. Whispers turn into frantic conversations. Accusations surface, but they sound hollow. Family-imposed shame has nowhere to land. Any more the narrative has flipped. What makes this moment so powerful is its silence. There's no celebration. No confrontation. Just the undeniable truth sitting between everyone involved. This is power reversal at its purest, quiet, factual, irreversible. The audience feels the justice before the characters fully process it. The trap has closed, but not on the person they expected. What was meant to control has exposed them instead. And from here on, nothing will ever return to the way it was. Panic doesn't arrive all at once, it leaks in through desperation. Missed calls begin to pile up. Messages shift in tone, moving from confusion to urgency. This is what happens when family manipulation finally fails. Control turns into fear. The people who once spoke calmly now sound rushed and unsteady. At first, the messages carry accusations. They question your intentions, your loyalty, your character. This is the last defense of emotional blackmail. If guilt doesn't work, blame will. But something has changed. The words no longer carry weight. Their power depends on your reaction, and you're no longer reacting. Then the tone breaks. Accusations soften into pleas. Requests replace demands. Suddenly, they want to talk things through. The controlling mother who once whispered shame now speaks with urgency. This reversal is uncomfortable to watch and deeply satisfying. Mentors note when boundaries are enforced, people who benefited from the lack of them feel betrayed. That doesn't mean you're wrong. Silence at this stage is not cruelty, it's maintenance. Resources like set boundaries, find peace, explain why consistency matters more than explanation. The family system starts collapsing under pressure. Relatives who once stayed silent now reach out, hoping to mediate. This exposes another layer of silent family betrayal. Support appears only when consequences arrive. Their concern isn't emotional, it's practical. This is where family-imposed shame fully reverses direction. The embarrassment they tried to place on you now reflects back onto them. Public certainty becomes private regret. The roles have flipped, and there's no script for this version of the story. What makes this moment powerful isn't revenge, it's clarity. You don't feel triumph, you feel calm. The absence of chaos confirms the decision was right. This is power reversal. Without cruelty, silent revenge without spectacle. For the audience, this is pure catharsis. The system that relied on guilt and obedience finally collapses under accountability. The regret comes too late to undo anything. And that finality, quiet, controlled, irreversible, is what makes the ending resonate. This story doesn't end with applause or reconciliation. It ends with understanding. Love, real love, never requires a signature, a sacrifice of dignity, or obedience disguised as loyalty. When affection comes with conditions, it stops being love and becomes control. That distinction changes everything. Family manipulation survives on confusion. It blurs lines, rewrites history, and frames compliance as virtue. But once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. Awareness doesn't make you cruel, it makes you free. And freedom is always quiet at first. A controlling mother doesn't always look abusive. Sometimes she looks concerned, disappointed, or just trying to help. That's why emotional blackmail is so effective. It uses care as leverage and shame as glue. Recognizing this pattern is not betrayal, it's survival. Mentors note if you've lived through family-imposed shame, start naming it. Say it out loud, even if only to yourself. Writing, therapy, or trusted conversations turn silent pain into structured understanding. Healing doesn't begin with forgiveness, it begins with clarity. This is the deeper truth behind silent revenge. It's not about hurting back. It's about removing access. It's choosing a silent decision over endless explanation. When you stop participating in your own humiliation, the system collapses on its own. The most powerful power reversal is internal. It happens when guilt no longer dictates your choices, when fear no longer shapes your voice. That shift is invisible to others, but life changing for you. And once it happens, it can't be taken away. If this story feels familiar, that's not coincidence. Many people live inside versions of this dynamic without ever naming it. This real family story isn't rare, it's just rarely spoken about. And silence is exactly what allows it to continue. Sometimes, the cleanest way to leave isn't by slamming doors, but by signing in silence and walking forward. No speeches. No closure scenes. Just a calm exit into a life where your worth no longer needs approval. And that quiet ending is the loudest lesson of all. If this story stirred something in you, pause for a moment and ask yourself, where in my life have I been asked to prove love through silence, sacrifice, or obedience? How many times have I confused guilt with responsibility, or control with care? Think about the last time you felt small around people who were supposed to protect you. Was it really love, or was it family manipulation wearing a familiar face? And if you stopped explaining, stopped justifying, what kind of quiet decision would you make today? Real change doesn't begin with confrontation. It begins when you recognize patterns, name the shame, and choose boundaries over approval. That's where true power reversal happens, internally first, then everywhere else. If this story resonated, you're not alone. Stories like this exist to remind us that healing doesn't have to be loud to be real. Subscribe to the channel for more real family stories, emotional reversals, and quiet revenge narratives that empower instead of break you. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story where silence becomes strength and clarity becomes freedom.